Hello, Bill.
Hello, Sandy.
Well, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. We've got,
We're very formal this evening.
yes, we've only got two images to look at. Well,
Okay.
two additional slides to look at. But I don't know if it will take us a long time or a short time because who knows what could come up in what we're going to see for sea change.
Kind of excited by this one. When you first saw this image, because this Sugimoto image is, if not famous, very well known in photography circles. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Is generally printed quite large.
Yeah.
When you first saw it, do you remember what you thought?
Enter. Hmm.
Enter.
Hmm.
You saw it as you see it inviting.
Yeah. Well, if not in, well, yes, inviting. Not in a sense of a particular pleasure. Like I don't maybe want to go in if I think about it too much. But there was a mindlessness to being with it. I mean, it helps. It's a big print.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever seen a big version of it in person.
You know, there's one in Tate Modern. Kind of big.
Maybe I have then.
Mm.
Would you know what the subject matter was if it didn't have a title?
Yes, I think so.
You think so? Okay.
Why these questions, Bill? What are you
Just
getting?
wondering. I'm not getting at anything. I honestly they were just of interest to me.
Mm. So, for people who don't know Sugimoto, a great living photographer. He was born in 1948 in Japan. He's an architect as well as a photographer, but he started this series around about 1980. I mean, this image particularly is from 1993, and he traveled all over the world to make these photographs of where sea meets sky or sky meets sea, or there's some kind of division between the two. And every photograph has exactly the same split of composition. So even though in this one, where the split is hazy and ill-defined, the halving of the space is always identical across all of them. I guess if you were to line them up, the lines would all be in the same position.
I wonder if he is that exact while taking the picture or if he does some cropping in post, as it were.
I would imagine that he would be as precise as that in taking. Yeah. And he would be working, I mean, he'd be working with a large format camera. These exposures also are taking a long time.
Yes. Do you see that as such? I mean, do you see an actual horizon in this one, or is it just haze and weird blurry sea to you?
Well, I was talking with some people the other day about nothing and points of transformation with nothing. And I was thinking of this photograph. So there is a register that it's the sea. But very soon, and maybe this is contributing to the sense of enter, that there is little definition, there's no definition of distance really for me. It makes it very easy to pass in and out of spatially. So I can move with this photograph, funnily enough. I'm not repelled by it or held back by it. I can move with it because nothing stops me at any point.
Yeah, there's a nebulous thing to this where there's nowhere to put your feet down, sort of. It's all transition.
I mean, he had said himself He says his work is an expression of time exposed. I mean, of course, it's time exposed.
Isn't that true of every image?
Yeah. But I think he meant it in a slightly different way as well, which is that he is actively looking at time through these photographs. You know, time is a passive element in everything, as you said,
Yeah.
suggested. But this is maybe him actually participating in a conscious way with time.
It is, you know, photographs are such an interesting thing because shutter speed is a finite measurement, and we humans perceive time as a continuous flow. And so we take a picture and we think of it as a moment, but really that moment might be 1,000th of a second or 1 second or 10 seconds. Or in this case, 30 seconds or whatever the heck these things are shot at. Do you, if something is a 5-second exposure, if nothing was moving in that photograph, if it was, you know, still trees or, you know, a desert or something, you honestly couldn't tell whether it was 1,000th of a second or 5 seconds, you know? Do you imagine that when you look at a photograph, do you imagine this as 30 seconds or 5 minutes or whatever it is contained in one, or do you see it as a single moment, even though you know it was a long exposure? You know what I mean? Like did you ever play with long exposure apps on, say, an iPhone? The old ones used to do this thing where they would take a bunch of pictures and it would slowly merge them together into this sort of like soft, hazy thing. Because basically it was just taking frames out of video and just merging them together. And sometimes I feel like that's what's happening in these kinds of things, where it's like we're taking this stack of moments and we're just smushing them together and averaging it all out. And then other times it just feels like this one moment is a whole unto itself. I mean, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Well, I can't remember what I was going to say before, but further to what you're saying, something comes up really about, again, to do with time and to do with the journey of time in terms of direction and a spatial relationship with time. So for me, and I think for most people who read in English, certainly, the past for me is over there.
To the left.
So on my left. Whereas the future to me is over there, somewhere in the right.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right. So when I look at this photograph, I don't have the same perception of how time is traveling, because time is actually receding into a space, a depth space.
It's almost like you're moving backwards and time is just going back away from you.
Yes, but it's not that the past is over there and the future is behind me, or indeed that the future is in front and the past is behind. It's just as if time is in transit, but is also directionless. It's a funny thing.
It is. Images like this, and I very much like this image, so don't take this the wrong way. Images like this leave me in an intellectual lurch, because I look at them and say, I think there are better reproductions of this image where you can actually almost like see the sea has kind of texture and shape to it that makes it feel like the sea. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's just like a very little bit of sea-ness to it.
Yeah, well, there is on this.
Yeah, there is. Oh, down the bottom. Yeah. I can't quite see it because I have a light on me. There are images that you and I can wax poetically or narratively about that ultimately are gradients, you know, or solid fields of color or these kinds of things. And I wonder if it isn't just, you know, human pattern matching. And that's what we're commenting on, you know. We see in it what we want to see in it. It's not that anything's actually there.
Yeah.
This could also be a macro shot of, the peel of a plum or something like that, instead of the sea, through an electron microscope, and we could have the same feelings about it.
Mm.
Um,
So does it
I don't know.
matter at all that it is about, or rather than saying it's about, that it is a photograph of the sea? I mean, are you suggesting that actually it really doesn't matter what it's of?
Well, I'm saying the fact that it is of the sea, and that we humans have so much pent up symbolism of water and the ocean and all the rest of it, and sort of endless distance, or seemingly endless distances out in front of us, and like the depths, the abyss, like all of the things about fog, where you can enter it and you get lost in it, and all of these sorts of symbolisms and somewhat imaginary constructs. I it lends itself to like automatically meaning something, and then of course it's really just an image of the sea on a foggy day. But because of the composition, and because of the way it is, and because it's printed large, it adds all this like meaning to it, as far as being high art.
Well, if we don't
And
give,
again, I really like this picture, and I'd love it on my wall.
if we give no meaning to it,
Yep.
I don't know if this is possible. If we have no meaning, and yet we acknowledge it is essentially of two parts, sea and sky,
Mm-hmm.
and we just spend time with it, looking at it, with no meaning, what happens to us? Does something happen? Is there a movement?
A movement of thought.
Mm, well, as we're trying to do this without meaning, yeah, a movement of thought. What,
even in the description you just gave, though, where it's darker at the bottom and lighter at the top, I mean, we humans cannot do other than see that as ground and sky. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, these are hardwired things in us. It also, I mean, do you see this as two separate fields, or do you see it as a continuous thing?
I'm just wondering if, I can say that I see it as nothing. I accept the fact it's sea and sky, as I was saying a moment ago.
Yeah.
But do I see anything? Do I pour my heart into it?
Huh.
Do I respond to it emotionally? Maybe a little, because I feel something from it, but I don't know if I feel something for it.
Sure. It's also monochrome, so we'd like lose an entire set of visual meaning. It's very Japanese. Like if you didn't know who took this picture, there is a certain aesthetic to this. You may or may not be right, but like, there's a certain thing. Simplicity, simultaneous simplicity and complexity. I always feel like, especially Japanese artists, photographers who do this kind of work, or drawings, there's this loneliness a lot of times, like this very solitary feel to a lot of the work. And I don't know if that's me putting that on it, or if that's part of the aesthetic.
But
I feel very alone,
there's nothing other than you putting what you put onto it.
True. I guess what I'm saying is that this doesn't give you all that much to start from. you know.
Or maybe it gives you everything. I mean, in nothing or in nothingness, there is everything, I suppose. The ending is a beginning. Krishnamurti said that. The ending is the beginning.
Right.
I love this as interchange as well. You know,
How do you
there's
mean?
well, again, I've said it a few times now, but I want to try and complete my I want to try and complete my point. Um, there's an interchange between these things that we accept, sea and sky. We find perhaps in that blurred middle ground maybe something that doesn't divide, but that allows each to be. And we also could assume that there is a slight, if we look very closely at the photograph, there's a slight delineation where the horizon will be. And in this series, because don't forget this is part of a wider series, that not all of them have got this haziness. Some of them have got very, very hard, stark line. The divisible two at that point of the horizon, or in the space where there is some kind of transition from there being actual sea and actual sky. I kind of wonder about that as a philosophical place or point of something happening.
Inflection.
Or not. A point of infinity almost. Kind of like
What's interesting?
the horizon, if we were to think about the horizon, I think we've talked about this before, you imagine you go to the horizon, you can actually get there and you can walk along it like a tightrope. Well, what the hell's on the other side of it?
Yeah. But what's almost more interesting about that is that, yes, in a less hazy image, there is a perfect line of the horizon going across, but that actual interactions between the sea and the sky are through evaporation and rain. They aren't through direct thing. They are through slow transitive sort of events, They're not at the horizon. They're diffuse along the entire surface.
Well, again, I mean, this is Sugimoto himself saying, living phenomena spontaneously generated from water and air in the presence of light. Though that could just easily suggest random coincidence. As a deity, I embark on a voyage of seeing. He's saying something he accepts is a physical thing, but that also through that physicality, the nature of the physical becomes spiritual, something of a spiritual quality in those physical things, in that way, in the way that we see, or he sees them and then records them for us to also see.
Yeah.
And this idea of there being like a voyage of seeing. Well, yes, he made many voyages to go and take many different photographs around the world, looking for these landscapes. I mean, some people might think this is preposterous. All you need to do is go to any place where there's sea and sky, and you would find maybe an image that could be similar to this, certainly. Yeah. Yet he was making a point of going to find these places and spaces and making images of them. And I wonder what he was looking for.
Well, what's interesting about it is that in the ones that I've seen, it's not as if the places he chose were distinct due to foreground elements or, differences of the shore. He was always looking out to the place where things had more commonality than differences, So yeah, it's almost like he wanted to imply difference in what is ultimately a very similar thing. It's like the typologies,
Yeah.
Here's 27 grain elevators, and they're all the general same shape, but they all look different.
Well, I don't know if this is necessarily classed as typology. It probably should be. So Sunrise and Sunset Praiano is a bookwork created by Sol LeWitt. And actually, Sugimoto possibly saw this work, and that's maybe what germinated or started the germination process of him beginning his own odyssey of seascapes. Anyway, Sol LeWitt, as you will know, was rather great, prolific artist of the 20th century. Highly inventive, yet also bound by kind of systems focus in everything that he seemed to do. So well known for his links with conceptual art and minimalism, process art as well, where the way of getting there is more important than the destination.
For you, where are you along that continuum? If at one end it is all about process and the other end it's all about results, 1 to 10, where do you sit on the line?
It's a very obtuse question, Bill.
I'm all about a tuition.
I have no idea.
Okay. This is me trying to measure things and you trying not to measure things.
I'm not trying.
No, I know. She's like, I just don't.
Anyway, what I think is interesting always is these interrelationships sometimes between the artists that we look at. And I did put this one after Sugimoto because I wanted us to try and enter the space, so to speak, of Seascapes, Sea and Sky. But Sol LeWitt was there first. Now, not all the photographs have got the kind of same purism, I suppose, as the line always being in the same place. But everything is always kind of formatted. It's systemic, as I said. He's obsessed with systems, really. And even when we think about his wall drawings, the wall drawings are really diagrammatical notations of stuff to do with systems in themselves. And actually, when we think about his other work again, pieces of sculpture that he would call structures rather than sculpture, we see somebody who's actually obsessed with cubes, stacking, formatting space or relationships between objects that then actually, I think, translates into how, well, the grid arrives in a bookwork, such as this one, Sunrise and Sunset, but also something in the nature of needing to organize and systemize the world, even when the elements are beyond us. So we don't control the sky, we don't control the sea, but to in some way order them to our own rules, of course gives control, but this work isn't actually about control in itself. I mean, the book is full of pages upon page of these photographs in this format. Have you ever seen it?
I don't think I have. I mean, in the same way that sort of Rothko's paintings, I've always found that some of them worked better than others, in my opinion. Do some of these work better than others?
What do you mean work?
Well, I mean,
do I like them better, some of them, than others?
If you had made them, would you feel satisfied with what you had made?
No, what's the criteria here, Bill? Because you put criteria on everything.
Yeah, but I mean, when it comes down to this, I always feel like there's a strange sort of Persig-esque question of quality in it, where it's like something either has quality or it doesn't. Something either fits or it doesn't. Or to quote Bob Dylan, if something's not right, it's wrong. There are some, say, combinations of, say, the colors that Rothko chose that I look at and I go, yeah, this doesn't make me feel anything, or he missed on that one. And you see another one, you go, oh yeah, that feels good. And it could be personal, and you and I might look at 100 paintings and choose 50 on either side of the line, right? You know, in the same way with this. But do you look at them as each individual page is a piece of work, or do you look at it, the book, as a piece of work in your mind?
I think the book as a whole is the work.
Okay.
The formal organization of the work within the work is actually, to me, akin to the formal organization of the paint on the canvas, or,
Sure.
you know, it's the same beast, really, to me.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
also interesting that in some ways, this could be sort of a fractal-esque kind of situation here too, where each one of these might be actually a smaller piece of a larger picture, or even a smaller piece of each other, you know?
yes. Well, that's actually what we're saying anyway, isn't it? That
Yeah.
to have the book as the whole work, and that these parts comprise the bigger picture. It doesn't have to be as basic as actually making a bigger picture, should they all be somehow aligned or jigsawed into the completed puzzle. But they do belong together. They do belong together. LeWitt said, no matter what form the artwork may finally have, it must begin with an idea. It is the process of conception and realization that's significant. So
Interesting. It's not even the process of making the thing. It's the moment of idea of creation. It's the big bang of the idea, not actually the time that passed after the fact.
yes, and what is greater than the big bang of the idea?
No, absolutely. The question is, in that case, why execute the idea then, if the idea is what matters?
I suppose because the only way we have to share is through these rather rudimentary channels or modes of communication, you know, in the same way that language is so incredibly boring in some senses. You know, we have to marry up our meanings to words that don't do what we feel justice.
Yeah. Or
Um,
even one step more abstract. I mean, you could have an idea for a story, and that idea is actually a feeling around one character, and trying to actually verbalize that story somehow always diminishes the initial feeling that it started with. I mean, but this is true of relationships in real life, you know, how we imagine them is always a more pure version of the reality of them. It's true of everything, right? The
what?
physical is always going to be a poor representation of the metaphysical.
Yes, but what else have we got?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of this stuff all of these images make me want to grab my camera and like go to Coney Island in the morning. And maybe I will.
Hmm. I mean, we're looking at an artist who is very precise in some ways. There isn't much as the expression is slightly different across all the different photographs because of their formal nature, their attention to the same things. Yeah, I get the impression of someone who's very determined. But in terms of the title, A Sea Change, I do also wonder, and we can't really tell it from the presentation, but over the course of these photographs, was there a point at which he found what he was looking for? You know, I really wonder about that.
Oh,
In
what do you think
fact,
he was looking for?
well, I don't know, but for somebody who records in this way and who has in place these systems of organization of reality, I wonder if there's more than just simply attempting to control the world, bend it to our will through our systems. But perhaps in the case of LeWitt, especially as somebody so interested in concept and yes, in meaning, if this is a journey, and that on that journey, though the photographs may all be remarkably similar, I wonder if there was a point at which he arrived at the thing, whatever that thing might be, or if there were several almost like eureka moments as he was putting even the book together.
It's funny because I look at the title and just the fact that he's taking pictures at sunrise and pictures at sunset means in many ways he's abdicating control to things that he can't control.
Yes, the elements of over which.
Yeah, he's like, I have to wait 12 hours or 8 hours for the next thing to happen. So in some ways, this is a meditation on the lack of control. And but the one thing I can do is I can take photographs of this and put them in boxes. That I can control. Yeah. But that is such a small scale power compared to the thing that is overwhelming him in the creation of these things. You know, in some ways, this feels like him letting go of the obsession of control and trying to allow nature to just do its thing, and he's going to follow along.
Well, he is also really interested in his earlier work. You know, he would do things like in these wall drawings that he made, which, by the way, he didn't always have to make himself. In fact, even after his death, people are still making Sol LeWitt wall drawings, which I love. Again, this idea of it's not even that there's a legacy. It's not about legacy. It's just about a timelessness of form.
Well, there's instructions, right?
Yes. Also because often when he was alive, if he made a wall drawing, they would be destroyed once their purpose had been served. So if there was an exhibition, for example, that was lasting for a month, after the month, he would destroy the wall drawing. But also the wall drawings could be transported. I mean, if he decided that he wanted to take a wall drawing from MoMA to somewhere else.
My house.
Yeah. As long as he could have the right size of wall, it would be extracted and moved. Anyway, the reason why I started talking about this is because, you know, he did look at things like, he was fascinated with like the iterations of one single form, always. So in most cases, there, you know, in his sculptures, there was the return to the cube, always. There was 24 versions of a square, I think. Like, how can you have 24 versions of a square?
Imagine like a partner of his being like, Sol, enough with the freaking squares.
I know. But all of it carries forward into this work. And for somebody who's so prolific, I've never got the impression from LeWitt that it's not that there was no change in his world as an artist, but it's too simplistic to say that he didn't evolve, even though he remained very focused on similar things. I don't know if that makes much sense.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, when he died in 2007, his later work started, you know, he got quite colourful and was as prolific in his older age as he had been as a younger man. He was also, I always think it's interesting that he had early connections to other so-called minimalist artists. Like he had a job as a clerk and a sort of night receptionist at MoMA.
Yeah. And
in the 60s, and he'd met so many people and was friends with so many of the artists who would have been kicking about. And actually also lots of them worked at MoMA doing really kind of rubbishy jobs, cleaner or
well, it's also interesting that, like, you know, the MoMA of the 40s, 50s, 60s was a very different place than the MoMA of today. You know, like a not nearly as large and prestigious and full of money and all the rest of it. It was still the home of a living art in a way that I'm not sure that it currently is.
But for somebody like Sol LeWitt to have spent time with Robert Ryman, for example, or Dan Flavin, or I mean, he knew Eva Hesse very well. These are all people, again, it's a cross-pollination all the time, isn't it, of influence
Sure.
and inspiration. I mean,
I feel like it's one of the things that's really missing with art today is that people think that social media is people interacting and collaborating in that way, but it's not the same thing as
No.
sitting down with people of like mind and discussing stuff.
Mm. Yeah. What do you think of this, Bill?
On a superficial thing, or like as a deep thought kind of moment?
No, it's just what comes into your mind.
I find it's fun. It's funny because the Sugimoto photo is different to me.
Mm.
I find most photos of sea and sky to be largely interchangeable. It's like trying to take 50,000 people are going to take a picture of a rock. It's like most of the pictures of the rock are going to be pretty similar.
Mm.
What I like about this picture is that it is so different, and that's what sort of makes it stand apart and makes it more than just a picture of the horizon looking out of the sea. The LeWitt photographs don't particularly do anything for me.
What about if you imagine them en masse, though? This mass in the book, where you've got so many, they're unavoidable.
Well, I'll come over and take a look at the book, and we'll see what I think.
No, I don't have the book. I wish I did, but it's very expensive and out of print.
Order one from Amazon used. Yeah. You've seen the book though?
No.
Oh, okay.
The images online.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll go to the library and see if I can pull it up.
Yeah, I think I would love to hold it and flick through it. I think I mean, purely selfishly, subjectively, aesthetically, it would be great pleasure for me.
Yeah.
To flick through all these pages. There's something about the quality of even like the color of it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting because the top ones are warmer, right? You know, these are actually either tinted or printed in color. It's almost hard to tell, you know what I mean, whether they're toned or they're actually color photographs. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Maybe for your birthday, I'll buy you can get a hardcover copy for $499.
Oh gosh. Well, you're giving yourself time. You've just missed my birthday, Bill.
Did I miss it?
No, you did say happy birthday on the day.
Okay.
No, actually, I think you got the day wrong.
I got it wrong, and then I got it right.
You were a week early.
But yeah, okay. Well, if you're a very good girl the whole next year, maybe I'll send you a copy. Yeah, I don't know.
I do want to say one other thing. I wrote it down.
Yeah.
The complexity inherent in transforming an idea into a work of art is fraught with contingencies.
Yeah. I mean, I think that contingencies is an interesting word, not the word I would have used, but yeah.
But again, it's this idea, you know, in the same way that I might read the Sugimoto photograph as having a recession of time or space, and it's not relevant whether it's forwards or backwards, but nonetheless it's on that axis. So I'm not saying it's in the past or the future. The contingency here is that it's timeless, it's anywhere. I mean, it's in a very specific place, and it's actually at very specific times, sunrise and sunset in Praiano in Italy. Yet, it could be anywhere. Anyone could have taken them.
Yeah. I guess that's where the not the problem that I have with them, but that when it comes to a lot of landscape stuff, it's very difficult for the artist to insert themselves in it in a way that makes it distinct. You know? $500. That's an expensive book.
Don't make promises you can't keep, Bill.
I didn't say I was going to. I said maybe, you know.
If you win the lottery, you can get it for me. Okay.
All I got to do is save like $1.20 a day for the next year. I can do that.
Well, Bill, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Sandi.
Bye.